It's with great pleasure that I welcome back Dr. Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert, the title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. Sean, you have a special message for the listeners?
Hey, John, I just wanted to mention for all the parents and students who are listening to this great podcast, we have a really special offer only for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast for Prep Expert. So if your student is going to be taking an online SAT, ACT, PSAT course anytime soon, or is looking for one-on-one tutoring with top 1% tutors, head over to prepexpert.com. We offer live online courses for every college admissions exam. On top of that, we have the best score guarantees, best curriculum, and best instructors in the test prep industry. And just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast, you can get 20% off any online SAT or PSAT or ACT course, as well as one-on-one tutoring. So you can get 20% off. Just make sure you use the promo code College Talk. That's one word, College Talk, and you'll get 20% off just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast. And I hope you guys can use that to your advantage, save a bunch of money at prepexpert.com.
Thank you so much, Sean. And to everyone out there, once again, that promo code is College Talk. That's one word, College Talk. Thank you all, and best wishes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Adam Webster, who's the Senior Associate Dean and Director of Admissions at Carleton College. Now, Adam was with us back in episode 91, which was released in February of 2023. Adam, so great to see you. So great to have you back. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, John. It's fantastic to be back here. Thanks for the invite.
It is my pleasure. And of course, we're here to talk about the great Carleton College. Now, for listeners who may not be as familiar with Carleton, Adam, could you start by sharing the core mission and educational philosophy that guide the college and what makes Carleton stand out among top liberal arts institutions?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And frankly, I do this all the time, John. It is my job, right? So I think it starts with understanding that for all the things that make Carleton distinct, it is first and foremost a pretty traditional, fully residential, integrated liberal arts curriculum. Full stop. We've always been that. We will always be that. We're really committed to that sort of setup. I think once you've accepted that and understand what sort of milieu of institution you're in, I think then you start to talk about the points of distinction. I'd begin that for our type of institution and the experience we deliver to students, many of our visitors are struck by Minnesota as a location. They are involved in a nationwide liberal arts college search, and they are going to many places in far-flung corners, and there are only so many places in the upper Midwest that make that list. Our proximity to the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport makes it an easy stop. Families like it, but it hits different. The upper Midwest just feels different than, say, Long Island or LA or whatever the difference is. And I think families put their finger on that. After that, and sort of beyond the cultural topography of the whole situation, I do think that the trimester is a fundamentally different educational curriculum than almost all of higher education. We're not the only place that has this, but it is vanishingly rare. I think Union College in upstate has this, but it's not common anymore. Basically, families and students who are considering Carleton need to understand that we operate on a 10-week academic calendar where we have that schedule 3 times per year, and that's to be contrasted with a semester-based program, which is 2 grading blocks of about 14, maybe 15 weeks per year. In a Carleton trimester, you only take 3 classes at a time. In a semester program across most of higher education, you're taking 4, maybe 5 classes at a time. That's a different cadence and pace to things, and a lot of the differences about Carleton stem from that. Finally, I would say that families often end up in our search funnel precisely because they're looking for a residential liberal arts college experience, but they're after teaching excellence. There is something about the trimester, there is something about Minnesota that really favors attention to the craft of instruction, of undergraduate teaching. For 15 years in a row, U.S. News and World Report has ranked Carleton #1 in best undergraduate instruction. And I don't care particularly how much mileage you put in U.S. News and World Report as an individual, but 15 years in a row in that publication says something enduring about the way the institution thinks about allocating resources and measuring efficacy that really impacts the experience students have. And I think students who come here can tell you about that.
Well, definitely, you're a rich liberal arts institution, and I love how you describe the trimesters. Now, Carleton is also known for its culture of intellectual curiosity, rigorous academics, and supportive collaboration. So, Adam, when you read applications, what habits of mind or personal qualities signal that a student is not just academically strong, but truly prepared to thrive in a community that values deep inquiry, creativity, and a genuine love of learning?
It's a great question. I'm actually going to back it up a little bit to talk about the trimester once again. I think many families come through and perceive it to be a quirk rather than a fundamental, like, design template to the institution. Basically, taking 3 classes at a time in a trimester means you are juggling less at one time, but you are covering nearly a semester's worth of material in only 10 weeks at Carleton. That means when we review candidates for Carleton, we're looking for students who seem to demonstrate some comfort with paced learning, the ability to pivot quickly, and sort of a stick-to-itiveness to the curriculum itself. It is not everyone's format for education, and I think as much as I love Carleton and I'm happy to work here, it's not for everybody. So when we start looking for candidates who are a match for the experience we offer, we're looking for that. I think we're also after really interdisciplinary students. I think the public can imagine a world in which liberal arts means no science or STEM work of any kind. I'm here to tell you that more than half of our students major in a STEM field, and the bar for admission based on STEM credentials is surprisingly high internally. Our humanists, our dyed-in-the-wool classicists, still need to be comfortable with calculus. They've got to know how to do that because their coursework is going to drag them around the curriculum. It's a requirement. And I think the best students at Carleton are willing to tell you that, like, yeah, I'm really committed to this field over here, but maybe the best class I took is far removed in this field over here, and I'm learning a lot about the interplay between those things. So we're after true liberal arts students, and that's sort of unusual these days, where students feel the need to pre-professionalize and tell me that they're a chemist and they've known since age 10. We like students who say, I really like chemistry, but I can't stop thinking about this class on evolution I took 3 years ago and the sort of ethical implications of that. That's our kind of student. So I think that speaks to the final property that is important to Carleton: curiosity. And that risks being fairly generic. So I'll just say curiosity at Carleton manifests a little differently. At Carleton, you need, as a matter of social and intellectual functioning, to be able to be excited about something you did not know was an idea in a very unfamiliar field the minute someone introduces it to you. Because young people out there have the chance to say, like, oh, cool, I'm into this, not into that, and so that's irrelevant to me. At Carleton, you will have people who will come up to you and be completely fluent in an unknown topic with a level of expertise that can be humbling. And if you are able to admit and comfortably say, I know nothing about that, but I'm interested, can you tell me more? You are opening up the social and intellectual space to be really animated by your experience. And that will carry you through a trimester, frankly.
Well, I really appreciate that. You talk a lot about the curiosity, pace learning, the fact that you are very much a STEM institution, but also the importance of interdisciplinary studies as part of your mission and philosophy and basically your core values. So, Adam, if a student is able to demonstrate their knowledge of that and things that they've done in high school that is in line with that, perhaps they demonstrate this throughout the supplemental essays, is that a student that's going to put themselves in a better light because they really understand your core values and they're able to demonstrate not only what they've done in high school that perhaps is in line with it, but what they intend to do with that once they're on your great campus?
Yes and no. Let me say it depends. The great admissions answer. We really enjoy students who have a sense of intentionality, right? A sense of like, I have pursued these things and I've thought about what they mean to me, and I'm able to align a personal disposition with a set of true inquiries, well developed intellectual explorations that I'd like to pursue. I think we have questions about how wedded students are to that, because sometimes we all fall in love with the sound of something rather than the substance of something. And I think we're after students who are comfortable being undecided or comfortable changing gears because they have suddenly discovered, even as a 19-year-old, that the thing that they've worn as their identity since they were 10 maybe doesn't fit as well as this new, interesting thing in a space that gives you room to spread your wings and try new things out. There's a reason we won't let students declare a major until the end of their second year, and that's because internally we know that students change their intended major over 70% of the time from what they tell us at the moment of application. So yes, to your core question, do people do well if they can articulate who they are and why they got there in their application? Yep. But we're always looking for a little humility. We're always looking for a little openness, a little wanderlust maybe about curricular stuff, because we think we're pretty good at helping students explore new things too, not just what they think they're good at.
Well, that's such a great point, and we appreciate that. And of course, one of the things that students, families, and even college counselors that listen to the podcast want to learn about is the application review. So, Adam, once a student submits their application, what does Carleton's evaluation process look like? For example, how many readers typically review a file, and what kinds of conversations or considerations really shape your committee's decisions?
Yeah, this is an ongoing and live conversation. And I have to tell you, for all the things I do in my life, nothing has consistently engaged as much of my time and my sort of experience in admissions as this topic has over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. The truth is, we've evolved it a lot in that window of time. We used to be an institution that had a single reader, and every single application that was reviewed by every reader would enter into a common committee space, and every application would be reviewed by some subset of readers on a paced schedule. While that's wonderful, we were finding that it was leading to some dissatisfaction with the way certain people reviewed candidates versus other people reviewing candidates. And no matter how many times we trained people, the general nature of staff turnover and the general nature of generational change just led to us having an issue managing systemic and inevitable bias that's part of this process. We have moved, as a result of that, to internal partner-based review process, where we read every application in partnerships, and we sort of talk live time about what we're covering in that application on the academic side and sort of how prepared they look like they've been in high school, how well they've done, as well as how set they will be to find success at a place like Carleton. Do we serve the students' needs well? Can we give them a better runway in which to take off? We also talk about the non-academic side really closely. You're not just going to Carleton to be a student, you're going to Carleton to be a member of a community. What roles do you fill in those spaces? How has that evolved over time? How comfortable are you with difference? These are the things that we're after, and we think that that is best assessed in partnership. Once we've had that partnership conversation, we've completed a ballot, we route these applications to places, and we rely a lot more on back-end checkdowns, where we send certain committees off to committee for multiple sets of review by multiple voices to make sure we're catching all the loose ends and catching, cleaning up the days where people might be a little tired or maybe we're a little too quick to judge that person. By and large, though, I think we are arriving at a process that is better able to consistently provide clear, consistent answers to schools, to students, to families about why we do or do not admit someone. I think we're more consistent in that space. And I think that that's the process here, trying to be fair to our institutional priorities, but also fair and consistent to students, families, and schools.
Well, we appreciate that thorough review. And speaking of institutional priorities, every college shapes its incoming class with certain priorities. So, Adam, how would you describe the role these priorities play when your team is building Carleton's first year class?
I had a fun time talking about exactly this topic at a citywide panel in Manhattan last winter, where I had to talk about what an institutional priority is and where they stem from. I think this was talked about because there's this idea that there are conspiratorial virtues developed in a secret space meant to exclude students. I will just correct everything right now and say institutional priorities emerge from deeply organic, community-based spaces, and they are there to help institutions better align what they're doing to the sort of student they want to generate as graduates from that institution. That is the catch here. One of the things we found in our process here is that for all the different things we need to do, we need to make sure we're really and truly reflecting the full range of lived experience at Carleton in our cohorts. So yeah, sometimes we have institutional priorities that are about filling out a roster appropriately for our Division III programs, right? It might be completing the ensemble. We can't have a world that's dominated by trombones but excludes the violas. We need to have some balance to the program that way. We also need disciplinary or intellectual diversity as well. The way students who are really mathematical approach complexity and the way that people who are very humanistically inclined approach problems are different but can be very complementary if they're given the right space. I think one of the areas that higher education has consistently struggled to handle is about socioeconomic diversity. And here I'm pretty proud of what Carleton has done. Over a decade ago, Carleton came to the sort of conclusion that if we don't attend to middle income enrollment, we will not have middle income. And we have historically identified that as a virtue of Carleton's enrollment, right? We have always had, compared to our peer set, a larger share of our students coming from middle income households. How do we define middle income, and how do we ensure that it's part of our process? Carleton benefits by not being need blind, right? For over 30 years, we've been need aware. Now, that doesn't dictate our process, but I'm mentioning it because with that, we're able to consider a family's household income as one of the many variables we consider when we think about admission for a candidacy. And in that process, we define middle income students and have ensured that no less than 30% of our students come from those backgrounds. That sort of work is, generated from within Carleton's community, backed up by all sorts of institutional research that talks about trend lines and sort of long-term demographic shifts in the country. And our job to make sure that we're enrolling students that meet that institutional priority happens in our office, right? We're the people who make sure that that happens for Carleton. And we've been able to do this transparently for over a decade, but it took a couple years to get good at this. And now I think we're pretty good at it. And most of higher education at institutions like Carleton has the barbell effect. You have a lot of families for whom the cost of college isn't a concern, and you have a lot of families who are there only by the grace of God and that financial aid offer. You don't have a lot of people in the middle, and Carleton has a lot of people in the middle relative to its market space. So very proud of that kind of work.
Well, that's terrific. And again, we appreciate the overview. I want to unpackage the overall application just a little bit further here. You see transcripts from students in AP, IB, honors, dual enrollment, and many other curricular backgrounds. Adam, how does Carleton evaluate academic rigor fairly and consistently across such different contexts?
That's such a good question. And this is the crux of our training with staff every year and the sort of centerpiece of our calibration. We talk about how to review transcripts consistently in usually early autumn is when we do our training for this process with our readers for the year. Here's the stock expression I will give you. It is opportunity within context. You can't separate the two, right? We're interested in how students have pursued opportunities, and we're interested in what opportunities are available to a student given their context. You don't have to work in our jobs are very long to realize just how different access to opportunity is across district, across even town, even a state. It's really diverse. And so how do we understand that and really honor accomplishment within those frameworks? So this shouldn't be surprising. This is the American way. We're really good at sort of finding ways to assemble learning opportunities that work for students, a district, a school, even a state. That's going to vary quite a bit in that context. We will pause and look closely because of what kind of institution we are at interdisciplinary rigor, right? You may be a really talented physicist and pursuing AB or IB coursework in those fields, but we're after students who are also demonstrating some appetite for complexity elsewhere in the curriculum. But I got to tell you, we're seeing more students who are taking blended coursework where it's not just counting all the APs they can get. It's some intentionality of maybe APs in this space, but the district has opened up international baccalaureate over here, or maybe more common, dual enrollment opportunities at surrounding community or state institutions where they can take more coursework like that. That's growing, not diminishing as a share of how students get ready for college going. And we need to be responsive to that. And I think we are. So how do we manage that in terms of staff training? The College Board landscape tool was really helpful for us because it was using census tract information to baseline student experience statewide and nationwide. Just how many hardships do students in this district face or at this address face as a share of the overall state or national average? We don't use that tool anymore, but we learned a lot about how to think about context and how to think about opportunities within context as a result of that. So I think I would just say Carleton's really comfortable accepting students taking very different paths to get ready for Carleton. We don't tally in the way that we used to about just how many APs or IBs they took and that there's this invisible line. The next question after we've looked at rigor is to immediately say, okay, what have they done with it? Why have they done this? Where are they going next? Have they let off this year? Have they added more this year? Like, we're really interested in that sort of trend line stuff.
Well, I appreciate that you talked about not tallying it, but as a follow up, if you have a school that has multiple offerings, for example, on the AP side, but they also have multiple offering in terms of dual enrollment, what do you want to see? Is there an answer? Is there some guidance that you could give? Do you want to see the students take the AP? Does it matter if they take a combination of both? Shed some light on that if you don't mind, because this is a question that comes up time and time again, not only with parents, but also with the students.
Yeah, and I understand it. It is more common, and the College Board data is very clear on this. This will grow as an issue nationwide. We need to be more prepared for this. I think one thing I'm always looking at here is what are the costs? If the opportunity cost of taking the AP here means you can't take the AP over here because it conflicts, make the choice that's appropriate to you, but also provide context. If you're afraid that someone like me in the admissions office is not going to understand why you did this but not that, take a moment to have someone or you yourself fill out a little more information about this. Like, hey, Calculus BC got moved to this slot, so that meant that I couldn't take French 5 AP. So I took Calculus by extension at this other place so I could fit French in at the same time. That is invaluable context, the kind of thing that we're trying to piece together on the backside. So you're doing the work for us. I appreciate that. We will follow up with school counselors to make sure we understand it when we see it. I do think I have to remind my staff that it's not all cynical when students opt out of AP at their school and opt to take a similar sounding course at the community college. Sometimes it's the best way to make their life get lived. Be open to the possibility that students intentionally chose something that gives them more opportunities rather than reduces their challenge load. So keeping a lens of optimism, keeping a student-centered approach to this is really helpful. It also is why it's beneficial for us to have many applications from an area because we become attuned to how many different students in a space have pursued educational opportunity in that area over the past 5 years, last decade, whatever that might be.
That's great. And a common theme that you keep talking about is providing context, right? So there might be a reason why a student takes a dual enrollment class as opposed to an AP or an IB. So would you say that the additional information space in the Common Application might be a great area to provide that context? In other words, the students have to understand that you as an admissions reader, you are a stranger to them essentially. And so anything that they don't include in their overall application, they're leaving it up to you and your team to speculate, which many times is not going to work in the student's favor. So is that a good place to provide that context, Adam?
Absolutely is. In a previous version of my life, John, I was a PR flack, which meant that one of the signal virtues, the thing that got us up in the morning was if you don't tell your own story, someone else will. So by all means, young people, families, tell your own story. Allow us to understand, because otherwise we're going to do our level best and then start to piece in together the gray zones as best we're able. And there's so many different places in an application where that can be used. So if you feel like you don't want to tell something about your story because it's hard for you, ask your counselor or maybe a recommendation writer to fill in that piece for you, to provide that context that we do not have. That's really invaluable. Not enough students use the full range of additional spaces on the application platforms to tell their story. And I think they should. It really helps us out, particularly true in highly selective admissions where it's always a hunt for information to make sure we have as complete a composite sketch of an applicant as we can get.
Well, I appreciate you talking about the additional space, but you also mentioned, and I want to repeat, that students, if there's something that your counselor can include. Perhaps it's something that you want them to provide the context to. Don't be shy to ask them to do so. And what I'll add is that it's also good practice to ask a recommender. When I was a teacher, and I used to write recommendation letters as a teacher when I was in my 20s, many, many years ago, I thought I was helping a student by basically writing that they were in my world language class, they were in my world language club, this is what they scored, and I thought I was doing them a service by saying what a wonderful person they were highly academic, and they were in my whatever the language was that I taught. I'm certified in Italian and Spanish. But point being is that everything that I wrote about many, many years ago is something that's easily found on the transcript. It's also easily found on the activity sheet. So looking back, I probably didn't add that much. Now, I'm not giving myself any credit. I'm sure I added a little something, but the point being is that students, if there is something in your overall application that a certain teacher, a certain recommender could add, or your counselor, don't be shy to ask, because the overall application is a marketing package. And so you have to be mindful of what each piece is supposed to convey, how each piece has to complement and build upon the next. And so if there's something that someone else can add to make your overall application stronger, again, don't be shy. Now, Adam, in terms of the GPA, do you look at the GPA calculated on the transcript, or do you and your team at Carleton recalculate that GPA?
We do not recalculate GPA at Carleton, and we never have. We've always sort of taken the district at their word on this about what is a value in terms of weighting for a GPA or ranking if that's offered. Instead, my staff spend time making sure that the similar GPA being reported across a district is equally tracked. I've been doing this job long enough to realize that one of the hottest third rails in college counseling offices will be about whether to report rank or weighted or unweighted GPA. I don't have a dog in that fight, but I recognize that many schools and districts do. My job is to ensure that whatever we're using, it's at least consistent so we can see quickly at a glance how to organize our applications to review and how to make sure to have a thorough conversation. If it's unweighted GPA being reported, that's totally fine. We just need to know that. If we have one student who's got a weighted GPA and another who's got unweighted, we're going to go dig around to see if we can get to a consistent baseline all the way through. That legwork is not why anyone gets into admissions. On the other hand, it's really essential to treating families and districts and schools fairly, I think. And so we do a lot of that work. I have never worked at a place that manually recalculates GPA, and I thank my lucky stars every day that I have not had to do that.
Well, we appreciate that. And again, context is key. So I have to ask, because this is another question that comes up a lot. Are you comparing students from ABC High School to XYZ High School? Or in fact, are you just looking at students, the context of their high school, what's available to them, what they chose to take, and how they performed? Because again, particularly parents, they ask me that all the time. Are they comparing us to that other high school down the block? And there's always a high school down the block or down the road, depending on where you live. But, what do you have to say about that, Adam?
We spend a lot of time internally thinking about how to measure students consistently within the same high school cohort, and secondarily within a high school historically, right? We spend comparatively less time talking about what the next town over from Syosset has on offer. These are necessarily unequal conversations, and we understand that implicitly in admissions work. The United States has deliberately chosen to ensure that college-going preparatory curricula are different by district, by school, by whatever. It is not my job to try and create the consistency in that space. It is to create a way to accept the diverse preparatory curricula on their own terms, and then to meaningfully navigate within that space to find the students who are going to be well served by an experience at Carleton. That is my job. The idea that I am sorting out best or across district is really secondary to the conversations we have all the time in admissions. Yes, we talk a lot about who is the strongest student we've seen an application pool this year from this school, but we will also find time to have the parallel conversation of which student in this application pool can we make the biggest difference with? Do we best serve? Right? We have those conversations in tandem all the time.
Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process. Well, we appreciate that insight. That's awesome, Adam. And what is Carleton's current philosophy on standardized testing? And what advice would you offer students who aren't sure whether submitting their scores will strengthen their overall application?
Yeah, it's a good question and an evergreen question as near as I can tell. We're going to be answering this for the end of time, perhaps. So just for some context at Carleton, we're in our 6th year of being test optional. And that was the first time we made that transition was right up against the pandemic. And we finished a 5-year pilot study and we determined that we were okay being test optional, that our admissions ranking and evaluation criteria were strong enough to outperform the whatever diagnostic value that standardized testing was providing in the process itself. I'll just say, and I'll say it loud and clear for the people in back, we are test optional and we really genuinely mean that. There are not times in my line of work where I say to myself, oh, I wish that student had submitted a standardized test score so I could understand them better. That's what I think parents think that I'm doing all the time. That is never what's happening. Like my staff go into a file and we will literally say, okay, we've got standardized tests to be shared here, but we will start with the transcript. That is always where this begins. That is a much better indication for long-term success at Carleton than a standardized testing result will ever be. We see rigor and performance over time as much better indicators of ongoing promise at Carleton, and frankly, suitability for the interdisciplinary curriculum that we're offering than anything we could find on the standardized exam itself. So I think there's a question about whether students should share a standardized test score if they have one. They're maybe in that space of, I've got it, I've taken it 3 times, should I share it or not? This is where I'm going to let students down because I'm not going to tell them what to do. Instead, I will offer them 3 questions that they should be thinking about. One is, if you're going to share your score, it should be based on personal accomplishment, that you feel good about it as a test taker, that you feel that it says something positive about your prep for and approach to college. Feel good about it, right? Don't share it if you don't feel great about it. If it doesn't make you feel good, don't share it. Who cares, right? You don't have to. Secondly, I think it's valuable for students who want to share a standardized test score to be aware of the standardized testing profile of their high school. We certainly are in the admissions office. So when you're proud of that score, is that score about average for your high school? Is it above average? That could be really meaningful context. We're going to try and situate your score within the context of your high school. So be aware of it yourself as you make that decision. Finally, and maybe most frustratingly, is just being aware of what your college destination standardized testing profile looks like. It is necessarily floated up in the age of test optional. I understand that. But being aware of exactly where your shared test score might fall vis-a-vis the 50% threshold that higher education loves to share is helpful. If you have positive answers to all 3 of those things, you should probably share that test score. But that score is going to differ based on the individual, and it should. I think that's an okay policy. We have students with perfect test scores we say no to every year, and we have students with far short of perfect test scores every year that we say yes to. And I think I have to say that a lot for families to believe me, but it's the honest truth.
Well, I appreciate the way you started the answer, which is you pointed to the transcript, which really is the number one indicator in terms of your academic preparation for Carleton or frankly any other college that you're applying to, because you're looking at 4 years of opportunities, what students selected, the ramps that they built, and of course, how they performed as opposed to a standardized test, which is, one snapshot in terms of how you did. Now, the activities section can be short on context. I think it's 152 characters per activity. Adam, how important is it for applicants to communicate their motivation, leadership, or impact? And have you seen examples where a student used that limited space especially well?
I didn't know how many characters were allowed in that space, but it does feel like 152 is about the right number. So thank you for knowing that. I've often wondered, and I wonder because there are people who don't do anything with that. Consistently just tell you what the activity was and maybe describe it in far less than 152 characters. and that's all we get. There are those that stand out, though, I think, who are able to add a little bit more color or context to it that makes it fun. And I guess I would say anyone who can get their own voice into what they do and why they do it will warm the hearts of their admissions readers the world over, right? You're letting a little of your personality shine in an area that feels like it's a resume. And even on resumes down the line, I think if you can find a way to do that, people are inclined to want to read more. And I think that's true here. I would say if you're someone who's got a clear sense of humor, it's okay to share a little of that. I'd also say if you don't use this as an opportunity to explore humor for the first time. It's not going to land well. It will feel discordant to you and to us. But being true to who you are and where you might be headed and using those 152 characters to flesh that out, valuable. It's valuable to us. Doesn't need to be, overdone and too many like shorthand ampersands and other ways to fit as much context in as possible. Use as much as feels right. If you don't have enough room and you can't say it the way you want, maybe you consider not saying it at all. What is it really adding? So I would say also to people who are sharing activities, this is just a general piece of advice. One step beyond the 152 character limit is think broadly about what your activities are. I don't see enough students who are consistently reminding us that they're also working part-time. It may feel inglorious to you or not very exciting, but to us in admissions, it's a meaningful use of your time. And I bet you've learned more from that experience than you're necessarily aware of. Even if you're in the act of defining it, we really appreciate that. And we've seen an uptick in students who are working now. And I think that that's valuable. So reminding students to think as comprehensively as possible about what their activities might be, how they want to package those things is really helpful. Don't just include school-based things because that feels like what your friend from class is doing. Do what works for you.
Such great advice. And I love that you talked about the part-time job because number one, as you mentioned, you learned so many values, so many leadership skills in terms of having to show up, having to answer to a boss, but also students, if you are working, it might be the reason why you're not in 2 or 3 other activities in school. And so if your activity sheet is blank because you didn't even list your part-time job, again, remember what I said earlier, the admissions reps, they're strangers. So anything that you leave out of your overall application, now you're leaving it up to them to speculate as to why. So if you have nothing on the activity sheet because you're working, and you didn't add your job, well, that's a problem, right? So make sure that you are filling out your overall application comprehensively. So again, we appreciate that, Adam. And the personal statement is often where students feel the most pressure to stand out. What makes an essay genuinely compelling to Carleton's admissions team, and what are the most common pitfalls you see?
So many things to say about this topic, John. I'm going to do my best to be as concise as possible, but you've heard me already. This is not my forte. So I will say personal statements are really appealing to admissions officers everywhere. And I think it's for this reason. It is the one element of an application that an applicant controls from beginning to end. A transcript is really valuable to us. It's the most important part of our application review, but like 3/4 of that ship has sailed prior to the moment that you're starting to fill out this application. Not so with the personal statement. You have a chance to really control what you say, how you say it, who it's addressed to, what it covers. We really own that intentionality and think it's a fantastic stage for any applicant to really use well. I think we know that good writers are good writers, and good writers know they're good writers. So they know that the 650 words isn't a constraint. It's an interesting obstacle to use or manipulate as well as they can. They're able to demonstrate a really sophisticated writing style and to convey something of substance, even if it's only in 650 words. That's really cool. I also think this should look different from applicant to applicant. Some people are really comfortable writers and have really heady topics they want to talk about. And I have read some that are like just this side of great literature. I have also read exceptionally moving, powerful, deeply evocative, personal statements that are about baking pies, right? The lift is not high, but hidden in that light lift is a really sophisticated, clever use of the medium that gets a tip of the hat from me. Like that's well done. I think as long as students are able to own their own voice in this experience, it's really good. So I think we in admissions expect there to be many different voices who are sort of reading and reviewing a personal statement, particularly from the Syosets of the world, where there's a lot of college going behavior out there. That's okay. It's when students begin to surrender their own autonomy because someone else wants to tell your story for you that we begin to have concerns. We wish it were better. I think AI is this fantastic temptation for young people, and it's this thing that feels like it can make this hard thing go away. And the truth is, when you find your own voice, it's not instant. It takes time to build your own conviction in your own voice, and you've got to let that play out. It's okay to struggle with this, young people. This is how it's supposed to go. It's also okay to have the voice of a 16-year-old rather than a 42-year-old lawyer parent or AI, which is like, consolidating the wisdom of the world. Trust your own voice. Trust your lived experience. We want to find that in admissions, and we will think more highly of those who are willing to share that they are an incomplete package at this moment in time because they're only 16, but here's kind of where I think I'm at, much more so than the flawless, bulletproof version of a personal statement that feels almost like a resume or a cover letter.
Wow, such great advice. And if you actually look at the prompts from the Common App essays, it's all about you students. They really want to hear your authentic voice. And the seventh prompt, by the way, is basically come up with a prompt of your own, right? They don't really care in terms of what the topic is. It's how you use that topic to convey your authentic voice at 16, 17 years old, whatever it is. And it's really their opportunity to get to know you. And I love what you said, that basically the transcript is 3/4 of the way done at that point, right? I mean, you're just looking at the work in progress in senior year, perhaps the mid-year reports in senior year come into play, but it's that personal statement, students, where you have a clean slate. You get to really start from scratch and be mindful of how you can convey your authentic voice and who you are. Now, Adam, how does Carleton support students that may have had an IEP or a 504 plan while in high school or learning differences so they can succeed both academically and personally once they're on your beautiful campus?
We have a lot of these conversations as admissions reviewers in this process. When I say we're always looking to say, how well can Carleton support this student on the journey that they're on? We're also talking about those things as well. Like, can we accommodate this student's learning style? Do we have the tools to support this student's learning differences and help them sort of flourish here? And the answer in almost all cases is yes. But the act of scaffolding that support and helping a student transition from a home community and a home set of providers and care networks into Carleton takes time, right? We spend all that time where I think students think we're doing nothing, which is after admission and before classes start. We spend that time actively talking with campus partners, with advisors, with our care facility on campus, scaffolding up the sort of outreach from our on-campus student health and counseling services out to home providers, making that as clear, transparent, and consistently accessible as possible. The transition to college is a really stressful time. 18 to 22-year-old is when a lot of underlying mental health issues become most manifest. We have seen an uptick in demand for services grow over time over the last decade or so. And so we just opened this last autumn a brand new student health and counseling center on campus. Frankly, it's nicer than my own doctor's office at this point in time. It's a lovely central campus facility full of fairly sophisticated state-of-the-art resources that also serves as a hub for many other campus resources. And being more conversant and being more dynamic in the interplay between advisors, professional healthcare providers, campus resources, and creating a more seamless experience is what we're trying to do there. So we have an Office of Accessibility Resources for students who need sort of complements to the standard class going experience. Things like lecture capture, maybe some mobility concerns, we've got that covered. The Student Health and Counseling Center handles lots of on-campus health stuff, but also we have a bunch of, professional counselors and therapists on staff precisely to help students do that work. In terms of transitioning IEPs and stuff like that, the only thing I would say is trimester can be hard for students who are used to having really self-determined learning schedules. I sometimes answer the question of, well, I'm someone who likes to take time off and come back to a project at a later deadline to hand it in. And I just got to say, I think Carleton might not be a really great fit for you because we don't have that slack in our schedule that makes it possible. So I guess the other part of us helping families consider Carleton, think about how they can transition their home network and their learning accommodations is by us being clear about who we can and can't work with as well as we can.
Well, I appreciate that, especially that you talked about the trimester, which that's something that students need to consider. Now, another question that comes up in terms of IEPs and 504 plans is, should students disclose this at the time of applying, or should they wait until after they get admitted?
It's a good question, but it's also a little beyond scope. We have students who do both, some who are like, "Hey, this is who I am. Do I make sense in your universe?" We have others who are carrying that concern that you've outlined in the back of their mind of, "Hey, I have this big thing that's happened or is maybe still happening right now, but it's sort of beside the point in my application. Let's talk about it later." And I think at some point my advice is you'll want to bring that to light prior to ensuring that this is the place you want to be, whether that's before admission or after admission. You'll want to kick the tires to talk about how well Carleton could support you in your learning needs and learning goals that you have for yourself. We're happy to have that conversation, but we cannot have it if you won't let us know what they are. And so that window of time between admission and sort of in like formal matriculation is when we do a lot of those conversations. So any which way you want to do it is fine. We will not change our review process in light of that. We just think a lot about like, hey, are we able to help this student do what they want to do? And we're quite flexible now. We have the resources to be able to do that kind of stuff. But students who never ask the question and sort of arrive hoping that it's going to work out will find that they're behind the eight ball.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that should be discussed before they actually matriculate and are on your campus. And by the way, you mentioned many resources. If there are any links that you want to provide students and families, just send them to me. And of course, I'll make it available to them in the show notes. Now, Adam, you've worked with many students, counselors, and families over the years, obviously. What is the one misconception you wish people better understood about applying to Carleton or attending a highly selective liberal arts college?
I've said a lot about Carleton, all right? And I trust that people can figure out what that's supposed to be right now. So I will take a step back and sort of share the perspective of someone who's been working this job and at Carleton for over a decade, but this particular job of director for over 6 years, where I'm sort of the nexus of a lot of different questions that come in from students and families. I'll start with the students, okay? Students, you will get as much out of this process as you put into this process. I know that sounds like parent talk, and I recognize how irritating that is. I just want to state it once again. You'll get as much out of this process as you put into this process. That means a good college search is about blending really selective college destinations with others that are safer bets, but doing enough due diligence to know that like wherever you get in and wherever you go from that list will deliver a meaningful and profound experience to you. It also just takes time to do this well, and it's okay to take time in this process. You will find your insights on who you are more profound and convincing to others if they are profound and convincing to you. So give yourself time to find that voice, own that voice, become that voice. We will see it and hear it along the way. Families, I will switch to this gear here. This can feel like a lot. The college search is a black box, and it's sort of necessarily so. A lot of different needs are all coming together in that space. Yes, parents, you are wise and accomplished adults who have done so many things that are impressive and demonstrate mastery of the world. And also, you may not understand or fully appreciate how admissions works, and that's also okay. It's a weird and murky process. Even those of us who work in this field understand that. A little humility about the admissions process will allow your student time to share their own insights. If you are willing to say to them, I don't even know how this works either, what are you seeing in your research? That's actually an invitation to a conversation, and it removes you from the pressure of having to direct a process. You become a partner in that process, and that's invaluable. I think that's the place you want to occupy. And I also would say mechanically, find a time to consistently talk about how the college search is going, but finding a time is not the same as finding all the times that you can talk about this everywhere. I think one time a week can be really great, and being transparent with your student about, hey, on Sunday afternoon, we're going to talk about the college search. Cool? Cool. that means you don't bring it up on like Friday when you have a thought. No, you hold it until that Sunday when the agreed upon time is to have that conversation. I think that sort of scaffolds productive spaces, gives your young person a chance to get ready for that conversation. Frankly, it gives you a moment to think about whether or not you really want to ask that question or raise those stakes. Maybe they are not necessary if you give yourself time to sort of back out of it. So I acknowledge the stress. The eternal wisdom of time and patience still pays off in this particular experience.
Well, that's such great advice. And this has been a tremendous conversation, Adam. Before we get to the last question, I do like to ask, is there a question I didn't ask or a topic that just didn't come up in the conversation about Carleton or the college admissions process in general that you'd like to share with us now?
Nothing specific. I will just make a pitch right now for the sort of school that Carleton is. Residential liberal arts colleges like Carleton are somewhat out of fashion right now. There's this need to be very applied or very pre-professional in this sort of orientation. I think if you look at the homework and you look at the median income of our graduates and you look at the sort of occupations and sort of honors the people who graduate from our institutions bring forth in the world, it is still humbling. A liberal arts college at Carleton is still transformative. In some ways, I think it's the only AI-approved position out there, but more than that, it might be a fantastic defender of a democratic order, that we teach civil discourse. We teach negotiation and conversation across difference as a matter of the experience here. And I can't think of a time where something like that has been in greater demand, at least in this century.
Well, that's such great advice and amazing points. And Adam, this has been tremendous. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is, and you've given so many, but what are your top 3 pieces of advice for students and families getting ready for the college admissions process?
I don't know if I can do 3, John. I'll do my best. I think 1 is have some fun. I know I use a lot of really emotive sounding terms, and you and I have been talking about what you do and don't do and how to think strategically about this. Words like context are really important, but I also think it's a life experience, like a rite of passage kind of thing, and it's going to happen whether you're a willing participant or not, and the pressure can be overwhelming. So I always say, lean into the fullness of the experience. Sometimes it is beautiful and profound and you see yourself in a place and that's lovely. And other times you go on a visit to a college and you've cut out all this time and you get there and almost immediately you can feel the mismatch. It isn't you, that tour guide is annoying you, that admissions person couldn't answer your question, you didn't like the weather, it just wasn't right. And you can really spiral into a bad place and say, this is a waste of time. I would encourage you to take another approach, which is something like, settle into it. Just how bad could this experience be if I let it wash over me? What is the absolute bottom of this experience? Because you're in a position to then collect stories to tell down the line. I'm pretty old now. I can still tell you about the bad experiences I had on my own college search back in the day that my whole family can still laugh about, right? We can really pause. I also think this is a great opportunity to do some traveling to places you're never going to go again. So stop at that roadside attraction. Get that ridiculous soft serve ice cream at whatever. Throw yourself out there for this. Because this is going to happen, and there's a way to really sort of revel in it for very little additional cost in terms of time or capital. It's a way to do that. Finally, I think take time to say thank you to the people that you lean on in this process. That's going to be your teachers, your counselors, maybe even your principal, the people who've sort of put you in a position to think actively about where you're going to go next and have been willing to be your champion in this process. Taking a moment to be grateful is the kind of thing that they will remember for the rest of their life, and that will allow you to come back happily and see them years after you've graduated from high school. So I'll leave it at those 2 if that's okay.
That's phenomenal. And I love how you talked about being grateful because, Adam, we are truly grateful for your time, your expertise. You gave so many insights and tips to students, families, and of course, the many college counselors that listen to the podcast. I'm looking forward to having you again. You were awesome, Adam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. And listeners, if you ever hear this and you find my voice, don't be shy about saying hello.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.